So, My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 316 has officially released on the Viz app, and let me just say, when it comes to translations, yeah, they've been fairly accurate, pretty much consistent, nothing really that much different, so there's not going to be a lot for me to go over when it comes to the actual translations, but in contrast, what I am going to be going over is what All for One says in this chapter and how we get a better understanding of who he is, not just as a person, but as a character in the story. And we'll get right to that right after the intro. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with another My Hero Academia discussion video, this time discussing everything that went on in chapter 316 of My Hero Academia, titled The Next. And when it came to this chapter, I thought this was a very good chapter. There was a lot of information, a lot of characterization of Hawks, of both Deku, of Overhaul, and even of All for One towards the end of the chapter, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But I really want to discuss All for One because we gain a little bit of understanding of like how he acts, how he really views the world, and like what type of villain he is within the story of My Hero Academia, and I just really want to talk about that a little bit more. So yeah, if you like My Hero Academia content, if you like My Hero Academia discussions, reviews, spoilers, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel at Big Blue Drew 97 if that's stuff that you're looking for. And without the way, let's get right into the discussion. So let's start the discussion with a few differences between the official translation on the Viz app and the fan translations, because when it comes to the actual translations of this specific chapter, there isn't that many differences between the Viz translation and the unofficial translations. For the most part, they're pretty much the same. What Hawk says to Lady Nagin is pretty consistent. What Endeavor says is also very consistent throughout the chapter, as well as what Deku says at the beginning of the chapter is very consistent as well. Lady Nagin's explanation for why Hawks and Deku, what she sees and how she sees it, where they still have like the glint of hope in their eyes, that is pretty consistent between both translations, as well as especially with what she says about All for One and how he has different allies under them, and how she was going to meet him in the next few months. That is something that is also very consistent, and the only like real difference between the official and unofficial when it comes to the dialogue that Hawks has with Lady Nagin, it's specifically when it comes to when he talks about how he's an optimistic person, and that's why he still like has hope even though he's a part of the Hero Commission, the Public Safety Hero Commission, where Lady Nagin thinks that he's done some bad things, and technically yes, he has killed a person twice, as well as like acted as a double agent, so he's not like clean, like he's done some bad stuff. But his explanation for the unofficial translations basically had said that there was someone who supported him, when in the actual Viz translations it's more of he was not alone, and we see an image of Hawks holding on to Endeavor. And I think that what this is really implying, and the main difference is that in the fan translations it is being perceived that someone was actually supporting him, when in actuality he was supporting himself by like clinging on to the idea of Endeavor and like looking up to another person, and by looking up to that person, in this case Endeavor, it was able to continue to give him hope and keep moving forward, as well as the fact that he is an optimistic person, where in contrast with Lady Nagin, she wasn't really that optimistic person. She wasn't like really optimistic. She wanted to be a hero, but from what we've seen, the pressures were able to get to her more than they were able to get to Hawks, which meant that her like sight, how she viewed the world, was blurred easier and quicker, which led to the incidents that involved her killing the former head of the Hero Public Safety Commission, which, to tie that into what we see in this chapter, that kind of ties into the idea of how they are different people, because her view was so jaded that she may have assumed that the head was going to kill her and immediately took action, when in actuality he may not have had a gun or a weapon on them, and that she jumped the gun because that's the type of person that she is. When in contrast, if Hawks was in that very similar situation, he probably wouldn't have taken action unless it was directly being threatened, like unless he actually pulled a gun at him, was aiming it at Hawks and was shooting at him, I do not think Hawks would be the type of person that would react to that until something was specifically taken. So this kind of shows that even though they have taken on the same position, being under the Public Hero Safety Commission, that the reasoning why Hawks was able to still have hope is because he's just a different person than Lady Nagant. So it's very interesting to see that even though they're two people who are basically raised in very similar situations and could have been put in very similar situations, that because they are different, like just not just by like how they were raised, but like because they are different characters, they had different views, which means that they would have different results even if they were put in the same situation. So that's very something interesting to see that you can pretty much pull from with this difference in translations from the unofficial translations and the official translations. And then after that, we go into basically Deku talking to Chisake, and Chisake is just ranting about like how he wants to see the boss, that he wants to apologize to the boss, and we just get this back and forth between Chisake and Deku, and that's relatively the same for both chapters. We see that Chisake wants to apologize to the boss, but he really doesn't want to apologize to Eri, and between the unofficial and official translations, he basically is alluding or like thinking about the idea that Eri would be the key to helping the boss get back to normal. But the only difference that I would say between in this scene comes in when Deku specifically talks to Chisake about the promise that Lady Nagant makes, because in the fan unofficial translations, Deku is saying that, oh, if you could only feel the same way towards Eri-chan, and then tells Chisake that the promise that he made to Lady Nagant, that Deku will keep it. That is what is stated in the unofficial fan translations. But in the Viz version of this translation, Deku basically says that, oh, if you're willing to direct that same energy towards Eri, then I'll honor your deal in Lady Nagant's place. And this is very different because one is saying that that Deku is going to take Chisake to meet Eri if he feels the same way, while and that's from the unofficial, but with the official, it's a little bit more different. He's saying that if Chisake is willing to like put in the effort that he's wanting to put in the effort, basically, if Chisake is willing to apologize to the boss, then Deku would uphold Lady Nagant's like deal if he's also willing to apologize to Eri. And it doesn't mean that Chisake will definitely apologize to Eri, which I think that he will, but that's only if he like truly, honestly, and like objectively like is sorry for what he did. That will be the moment that he apologized to Eri, and Eri will have some type of development and growth from that. And that is what is seen more in the official Viz translations. But in the unofficial translation, it's appearing that, oh yeah, if Deku just had, if Chisake just has those feelings that he may want to apologize to Eri, that Deku would just take her to them immediately. And I think that even though they give off very similar vibes, there's like small contexts and nuances to it. And especially not just for Deku telling Chisake that he's going to eventually bring him to Eri, but more like subtle, more of like the unofficial is saying that he's going to do it immediately. But in the official, it's like, oh, it's going to take a little bit more time, and I'll only give you that option. I'll only uphold my bargain if I feel as if you are actually sorry. So one of them is like, oh, you just feel it, I'll take you. While the other one is like, if you'll feel it, okay, then I may consider taking you there if you truly do feel sorry for it. So if anything, I probably prefer the Viz translations of it, because it shows that Deku still kind of holds like Chisake like at like arm's length. He still hasn't forgiven him, but because he sees that he's willing to apologize for a wrong that he's committed, that Deku is willing to possibly like give him what he wants, because he doesn't see him as purely evil, as long as he realizes that he didn't just hurt his boss, that he also hurt Eri, and that if he's willing to apologize to the boss, that he also needs to be willing to apologize to Eri. And if he's able to do that, then Deku would be willing to uphold Lady Nagant's bargain and bring him to the boss. So yeah, I kind of like how the Viz interpret that. And then we get to probably the part that I'm going to talk about the most. When it comes to the differences in the final few pages of the translations between the unofficial and Viz, there isn't that really big of a difference. Deku and the other pro heroes, including Kamui Woods, Edgeshot, Mount Lady, Best Sheenus, Endeavor, they all walk into the house, and we basically get we get All For One basically appearing in a hologram and basically giving his speech as when he finishes his speech, eventually to Deku, the house explodes. And something interesting that I want to bring up and talk about more when I get to that part is that we hear tick, tick, tick as All For One is talking, which could be alluding to the fact that there's a bomb there and that Deku's danger sense didn't go off. And I'll talk about that like pretty much now. But yeah, when it comes to the actual differences between the unofficial and the official, there aren't that really much difference. They basically convey the exact same thing, with the only like real exception to this is how All For One gives an example of when it comes to like human societies, the specific flaws of certain hero societies. He brings up democracies and dictatorships in the unofficial translations, but in the official translations, he brings up democracy and socialism, and he's not necessarily wrong about what he says. So yeah, with that out the way, the differences between the unofficial and official translations, I'm going to talk specifically about the dialogue that All For One says to Deku, and like what it really means, not just for All For One as a character, but All For One as the person. Because starting off, he basically is once again like chastising Deku by saying like, "Oh, Deku, you're here. I guess you got Lady Dagon's message. Oh yeah, I knew you weren't the type of person that would leave her behind. Yeah, I'm the type of person that is able to like read people's movements. Oh, did you know that it wasn't really my fault that all this happened? I mean, she joined me on our free will, so you can't really blame me for that. Oh well." So yeah, just from like that quick summarization of it, we get a good understanding of what All For One is as a character. We've known for a while that he's manipulative. We know for a fact that he's the type of person that would gaslight someone. He says that, "Oh yeah, no, Lady Daggett came to me. Yeah, she's the one who wanted this. She came to me of her own free will." To the response that should be, "Sure, but you're the one that broke her out of prison. She came to you. But we saw that you actually directly went to her and asked her for her help, as well as the fact that she didn't consent to having a bomb quirk placed inside of her. You said, 'Oh, let me give you a quirk that'll be helpful to you,' but that bomb quirk isn't helpful, so that's objectively false what you said. Sure, initially, she may have wanted to help you, but you literally gaslit her into the situation." So it kind of shows that he's the type of person that is very manipulative, but he doesn't see his manipulation as bad. And we also kind of get the confirmation of how All For One is able to kind of like predict the future, and it is most likely not due to a quirk, but is most likely due to his like sort of like intelligence and like his age and like his knowledge of the world, and the fact that he's been on this earth for 120 plus years or so, and how he's amassed probably all this knowledge to be able to predict people. He's fought All Might, and Deku is pretty like similar to All Might when it comes to their ideologies, so it makes sense that he would be able to predict what Deku would do because he knew All Might, as well as the fact that he's just the type of person that's able to predict the situations that are going on outside, as we see that when he was defeated by All Might for the first time, and when he had that conversation between All For One and All Might when he was in prison, he, for the most part, accurately predicted what was going on outside of the prison when he had no way of knowing anything. Even the prison guards themselves are saying, "Don't confirm anything or give him news about the outside world." But for the most part, he was able to tell All Might exactly what happened, and it's not because he was using a quirk, because if he was, they would have recognized it, because they have the ability to recognize when he's able to feel a little itchy or scratching. They have ways of recognizing if he could potentially use a quirk, but this is showing that he was only able to do that just based off his knowledge and his ability to predict people's movements. And this just confirms that in this chapter that most likely he's just very good at confirming what people are going to do. Like, he specifically called out what Deku was going to do when he left UA, and that Lady Nagant should try to capture him on a rainy day, which she does. So he's just very good at reading people. So we get a better understanding that All For One is an actual intelligent individual that is able to like manipulate people through gaslighting, making it appear as if it was their choice when he had full control of the situation, as well as being able to like predict and manipulate the movements of other people, as we see in this chapter where he basically set a trap for Deku in a way that possibly was able to go around his danger sense quirk. And with that in mind, I want to talk about like probably an explanation for why we don't see danger sense activate in this chapter, because from what we know, danger sense activates when Deku is in danger at the moment, or when danger is possibly coming his way or is in the surrounding area. He's able to kind of get a read on that and is able to jump into that situation at any means notice. But we notice that in this chapter, at least as far as we're aware, we don't see the danger sense logo, the lightning coming off Deku's head or anywhere around him before the bomb goes off. And many people may be trying to understand, well, what does that mean? Why didn't it bomb go off even though Deku has danger sense? Isn't that able to like predict when danger is occurring? And I think this kind of gives a deeper understanding of what danger sense is, because we never got a dialogue box for what danger sense is, nor did we get it for a smokescreen. We only got it for like Fajin, Black Whip, and I think Float, but even then that's a little bit up in the air. But I think what this is alluding to is that danger sense works a little bit differently than we think. And from what I'm understanding from this situation, danger sense is only able to sense danger that is actively happening. And this can be seen from all the times that we see danger sense. We see danger sense when Shiki is in the air, his like quirk tendrils are like sticking into the ground, and we also see danger sense like going off when Dabi is attacking Shoto and Deku eventually intervenes. We see that danger sense goes off when someone is actively in danger at that moment, or something is actively trying to damage Deku. In the case of danger sense going off with Muscular, when Muscular was trying to attack people, most likely Deku was there to try and intervene in that moment, as well as when danger sense went off when a bullet was aiming at Deku and he was able to kick it. But we see that it doesn't like do it like an automatically. Even though Deku was trying to avoid the bullet, he was still able to get shot, as it like basically a second bullet that he didn't predict Ricochet's bullet. So I think what is going on is that danger sense senses the danger within the area, but it's not like pinpoint accurate, and it has to be something that is actively going against him. So with the idea of Deku being shot with the bullet, danger sense went off, and unfortunately Deku wasn't fast enough to react to the second bullet, but danger sense was still reacting to the second bullet. It was just reacting to both the first and the second bullet, both being of equal danger, and instead of saying danger sense, it was danger sense for the entire situation. But for here with the bomb, the difference is the danger doesn't come from the bomb ticking, because you can get away from a ticking bomb, especially if you're fast enough and you hear the ticking and you're able to run away from it instantly. But in this situation, All For One is talking over the ticking of the bomb. And the fact that I didn't realize the ticks at the beginning, and it could be because this is a manga and it's not an audio format, and ticking is specifically something that you specifically hear, not necessarily something that you read. But even then, you could have someone like Deku, danger sense not going off, because the ticking of the bomb is not the danger. The actual danger of the bomb is it going off and exploding. And most likely the moment that the bomb goes off is probably the moment that danger sense will activate. Or it could be a sense of danger sense only reacts when something dangerous is actively going off. So maybe instead of like the first 2 or 3 ticks, it doesn't go off. But as soon as it approaches that second or third tick to the last tick, that's when it will go off. But we don't see it in this chapter going off. So what I'm most likely thinking is that when it comes to probably explosions or of dangers to that extent, that I view it as if danger gives off this type of signal. And that when that signal is given off, danger sense has the ability to read that signal and be able to alert the user of when that happens. But when it comes to a bomb, the danger isn't alerted when it begins to tick 1 or twice. It only would respond at the actual moment of explosion. Meaning that most likely if Deku were to ever be attacked by just like an explosion in the surrounding area, danger sense probably wouldn't go off, because it wouldn't sense the danger coming, because the danger of the bomb doesn't come from the time it takes for the bomb to explode, but the actual bomb exploding. So yeah, that's kind of like my explanation for why we don't see danger sense right now, because we could also get a flashback to like maybe 1 or 2 seconds before the bomb actually explodes, where danger sense goes off, and Deku just realizes, wait, why is it going off? And then he hears a singular tick, and he's like, oh, that's probably why. There's a bomb. Let me try to get everyone out of this. And this could be leading to predictions of what's going to happen next chapter, so I'm going to leave that a little bit towards the more end of this video. But from here, I want to really talk more about the final things that All For One says pertaining to Deku as a hero, and when it comes to the nature of people as a whole. For the basic second to last page of this chapter, we basically just get more of All For One monologuing, how he talks about how quirks, and when it comes to society, how we preach the idea of individuality, but that societies are always under tight controls, and how people who want to express their individualities, if they are viewed as wrong, then they are ostracized. And how he talks about how different organizations, different types of government, like democracy, or different like economic systems like socialism, how it doesn't really matter, and how the root of like all of these concepts of human society, before human societies existed, all the roots of these problems are stemmed and governed by the principles of like all social organisms. And how when it comes to Deku, that he's following this path that is going to eventually lead to his soul like ending, it's going to be tainted, and how that now All For One is specifically focusing on Deku, and how when he was in jail, he stopped thinking about that old oath, All Might, and now he's only focusing on Deku when he says that now it's your turn as everything goes off. And I really want to go over like what he specifically says, and what he somewhat gets right, and what some things he gets wrong. And specifically what he gets right is that when it comes to society, if you are different from what we view as the norm, or if you use your quirk, or your quirk itself is something that isn't really like accepted by society, then you do get ostracized. And we've seen that through characters like Toga, like Spinner, like even with Shigaraki to an extent, that these quirks are seen as like evil, where Toga drinks blood, but she only drinks blood because that's how she's able to communicate like her love and her feelings for people. Or you have a character like Spinner who has a heteromorphic quirk, but there are like individuals that think that he's a curse, he's a disease, that he's a monster that needs to be purged, and because he just physically looks different. Or Toga interprets love in a different way because of her quirk, they get ostracized. And that is something that society does, or specifically the hero society of this world fails to realize, that it's so tightly controlled that if you only slightly go against it, you are completely ostracized, not just from society, not just from the government, not just by the people, but you just are thrown into the trash. And by doing so, you create these villains, you create the Togas, the Dobbies, the Shigarakis of this world, because it's too under control. And when it comes from All For One's perspective, he thinks that because he understands this, that under his role, where it's probably going to be a tight control, but he believes that it's not going to be as tight as society, even though most likely it will probably be even tighter, that he should be the one to rule over the world, because he understands like the nature of humanity, and how these societies stemming from democracy and socialism, how they don't matter, because the root of the problem is people, which is also something that's somewhat true, but also somewhat false. His ideals are basically the idea that like it's in human nature. Basically, the ideas of All For One is that the root of the problem, which is people being ostracized because of their specific individualities, is just rooted in human nature, and how this is something that human nature is just a part of us. We cannot control it, and that it's just the principle that governs like people, that is what it is. The ostracization of specific individuals that we view as wrong, that is what is natural to humans, and that democracy and socialism aren't really fixes to that. Which it's weird that he brings up democracy and socialism, but when it comes to what he's saying, like that it's what he basically is implying, that no, like even these famous views of both economic advancement and political advancement, these who are seen as like the peak of both of their fields in some respects, cannot like fix the root of the problem, that they are problems, but they aren't the roots of these problems. And he basically goes into the idea that this is just all human nature. And I will say this line is probably stated best in the unofficial translation, even though they both bring up the similar idea. But basically, it's the nature versus nurture debate. Which is more influential on a person, on an individual, on a society? Is it how it is nature brings it up to be? Are we just born like this? Or is it nurture, how we're raised? And when it comes to how All For One views it, he specifically views it as, oh, we are born this way, there's nothing we can do about it, so we might as well live with it and go under my rule. And that's something very interesting, because it shows that he may be the idea of like evil for just being evil's sake, that he's doing all of this because he wants to, and what he wants to do is be evil. He wasn't raised to be evil, because if he was, then his little brother would also turn out to be evil as well, but we see that he's not. So he's evil for evil's sake, and that is kind of a trope when it comes to a villain, but the difference is that he's enjoying being evil, and that he's actually, for the most part, choosing to be evil, which is very interesting, because that actually ties into the idea of going against nature but nurture. That even though he wants to do all of these evil things, and even though he does enjoy all of these evil things, it's still his choice. He chose to specifically manipulate people. He chose to give his brother the stockpiling quirk. He chose to raise Shigaraki as evil, and he chose to teach Shigaraki these twisted values. He chose to do that, but yet he still believes that people are just inherently bad. That is a contradiction inside of All For One when it comes to what he believes and what he actually does. And what is very interesting about it is that when it comes to like human nature, there's a reason why it's nature versus nurture. You have Deku, who is born without a quirk, but because of his upbringing and like his nature, as well as how he was nurtured, not just by his mother, but even like what All Might has been doing over the year, he's able to like grow into a hero when he was basically born into a world where if you don't have a quirk, you can't be a hero. He was nurtured into what he was, but it was still based on his nature of being quirkless. And I think that it's very interesting to see how they both kind of embody this nature versus nurture debate inside of them, both All For One as a character and Deku as a character, but the difference is that All For One is a villain and a hypocrite. And this doesn't even go from like just nature versus nurture debate. He's even more of a hypocrite because he tells All Might during their fight that the reason why he's giving up and going to prison basically is to help Shigaraki grow, and that Deku won't grow if All Might is still always there coddling him. But the hypocrisy comes with the idea that, yeah, he wanted Shigaraki to grow and be individual, but he still wants to control him and take over his body. All For One is the embodiment of the nature and nurture debate as a contradiction in itself, and I find that to be the most interesting aspect about him. The fact that he embodies both nature and nurture, but he doesn't realize it, and he's a hypocrite. And the reason why he's a hypocrite is because he's evil and a villain and chooses to be this hypocrite. He chooses to be a hypocrite without realizing it, and I love that about All For One. And it's just amazing to see how this is eventually gonna bite him in the butt, how his ideologies are actually rooted in truth, but because he chooses to do the wrong instead of going directly with his natural ideas of his beliefs should go towards, which is more of a positive conclusion, it will eventually lead to his downfall. And the fact that he's teasing Deku now may also backfire in the end, as well as how he tries to go against his idea of like letting his mentee grow and still being a part of him. That's also going to eventually bite him in the butt, and that it's all going to be because of who he is as a person, because he looked at the villains and always thought that the villains should win once in a while, and that why should they always lose to the heroes? Well, the villains always lose to the heroes because of who they are inherently, and through that inherent ideas of who they are, they automatically lose because they embody those aspects that will fail in the end. So yeah, This is probably going to be a longer video than normal because I just really wanted to talk about All for One and why I actually like him, and it's mainly due to the duality that he holds with the idea of nature versus nurture, because that's probably the aspect of psychology that I really got attached to when I did some like understanding of it when I was in college, and that's just something that I always try to look for in different characters such as All for One, Deku, All Might. All of the characters, whether or not nature or nurture or both, play a part in who they are as characters as well as when it comes to the story. So yeah, that's all I really have to talk about on this chapter as well as this topic of All for One right now. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like on this video. If you want to see or hear more about me talking about these ideas of nature versus nurture, leave comments down below on what you think that I could talk about when it comes to this ideology, especially when it comes to like manga such as My Hero Academia. If that's something that you're interested in, leave a like on this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, leave a comment down below what you thought of this video, what you think about this chapter, as well as hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload. So yeah, that's all I really have to say for now. Hopefully you do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!